We should share the news about these chips to start off.
It's not a bad idea.
Okay, there's so many people in my Instagram gang that are anti-seed oils because we're all based, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And big fans of saving money, so Aldi stands.
Mm-hmm. All these. So where those two worlds meet, I'd like to make an announcement that we found some avocado oil chips at Aldi. They're the Clancy's brand, which is that like Aldi's store, one of Aldi's store brands, right?
Yeah.
Because I've seen it in other stuff. Kettle chips, avocado oil, currently munching on the apple cider vinegar flavor, which I think is a spin on salt and vinegar.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. But just let me do a quick review. Okay. The apple cider is a little strong.
I like it a lot.
I know you do, but for me, I like just the classic vinegar. I don't know. This one pulls too much apple.
Okay. You have a more discerning palate than I do.
These are a little softer than like your classic kettle cooked chip. You know, so take that into consideration. We also got the sea salt flavor, which is my favorite. These are, let's see what the ounces. This is a 5.5 ounce bag, so kind of on the small side. When we bought it at Aldi, a month ago, it was $2.99.
Yep.
Okay, but the Siete Foods avocado oil potato chips, oh, look, I have a bag right there. I can compare the exact ounces. One sec. It is also 5.5 ounces. This runs between like $4.15 and $5, these Siete bags.
At Natural Grocer.
Yeah, or like your higher end grocery stores.
But these are both clean potato chips.
Yeah, I don't think the ingredients are like organic. I don't particularly care about organic. That's really not in my top priorities when I'm looking for clean food.
But the Clancy's ones are non-GMO and made with avocado oil, which was the big thing we were looking for.
Yeah. Like, let's just compare ingredients here. I guess the Aldi ones have apple cider vinegar powder, and then in parentheses, it's maltodextrin and apple cider vinegar. So is maltodextrin a preservative?
I don't know. Dextro makes me think sugar.
And then in the Siete ones, the comparable ingredient is distilled white vinegar powder. It doesn't have any parentheses or anything. It says potatoes, avocado oil, distilled white vinegar powder, sea salt, serrano powder, citric acid. And then the Aldi ones are potatoes, avocado oil, cider vinegar, and sea salt seasoning, parentheses, apple cider vinegar powder, double parentheses, maltodextrin, apple cider vinegar, sea salt, sugar, citric acid, maltodextrin again, and natural flavor. Ooh, see? Bobby.
Yeah, not Bobby approved.
Not Bobby approved. Bobby, is it Parrish on Instagram?
That's a good recall there. I haven't watched him in a while. But yeah, one of the food guys on Instagram goes through these grocery stores and says yes or no. So Clancy's is going to be a little less clean, I suppose, but big step forward. I would eat that before I ate the other stuff they sell on that aisle.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the most expensive things that we buy in terms of unit price. And $2.99 versus nearly $5. I mean, that's a pretty big gap. We have a lot of chips. Anyway, so we found these chips at Aldi and we bought like a whole box. We came home, we did a taste test, and I was like, Jace, you need to go back tonight because they have restock day tomorrow. And so he went back.
Yeah, I bought a full case.
But then I'm looking at this other bag that we bought at Costco, and I wish I could remember the price. It's the Boulder brand of chips.
I see that's avocado oil as well.
Yeah, and that was a Costco buy. That's a big bag, and they're wavy, which was a big plus for me. They're not as salty as I'd like, though. Sort of a chip connoisseur. You didn't know we were going to do this today.
I didn't, but I'm prepared.
I didn't either.
I'm thinking, I wonder if my ear doctor's listening to this, telling me not to eat
a
high sodium diet.
You're not supposed to eat that. I'm also looking at a bag. The Siete brand has the dairy-free queso flavor chips. The kids love those. I think it's like an alternative to Doritos. It's still like the potato kettle cooked style, but cheesy. We call them cheesy chips here.
They're good.
Yeah.
I saw Rachel Cruz recently did a price comparison between Aldi and Walmart.
Oh, how did that? Rachel Cruz from
Dave
Ramsey's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, his daughter.
And she found there is actually, there are actually things that are cheaper at Walmart, but you're having to buy the generic store brand and it's dairy. So if you care about clean at all, maybe that's not the way to go.
Wait, the generic store brand dairy at Walmart
is a little bit cheaper.
Slightly
than
cheaper.
Aldi's store brand.
You know what happens when you go to Walmart, though, is it's less controlled of a shopping environment and experience than Aldi is.
Yeah, you'll buy a lot more.
You end up going down the toy aisle with the kids and you buy them a new little Transformer and you're like, well, just get the little one, but it's still $12.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, but look, their baby sweatpants are on sale and they have so many 2Ts. And you... That's what happens there.
The baby needs those now.
That's how they can afford to cut prices on their milk.
Fair.
So last summer, I think this was a Facebook post about how we had eventually cut out all seed oils from our house, which, by the way, is so freaking difficult to do. We still buy things with them in there because we're not filthy rich. Our tortilla chips... I can't make the switch to Siete tortilla chips just by like the amount that we consume in any given month.
Yeah, we'd bust that grocery budget wide open the first week.
I can't do both chips, Siete brand. You should sponsor us, Siete, so that we we can eat your avocado oil chips all the time. In this post that I made, I said that we had been off of seed oils almost totally for a while. And I basically didn't use sunscreen last summer on me or the boys. That says a lot, mostly to note I am super pale, fair complected, slightly redhead, but pale enough to where I have like the blonde eyelashes. So I feel like I qualify to say redhead.
Yeah.
And then the boys are also share my skin tone. Jace is a little bit darker. You have more olive, but still, people that would normally require sunscreen, we basically didn't use any last summer. And I think we got burned once or twice. And I know that the time that we got fried was the week of the 4th of July, where we were just eating all the good stuff. Because I still would like them to have like a childhood that's also, and also like you can't do this all the time. Like crunchy moms, like you can't be 110% all the time.
No, I'm not going to look at the ingredients at every birthday party. Yeah.
No, we're not doing that. But I thought it was sort of, and it wasn't, I didn't go into the summer saying like, I'm going to have this experiment, but there's a school of thought that says, that links the rise in skin cancer rates to the increase in seed oils present in foods in America. I've seen that a few times and I can't give you the biological explanation for that, but
I mean the big knock against seed oils, apart from the endocrine disruption, is that they're inflammatory. And so I can imagine if your skin, being your largest organ, is constantly inflamed, that the extra radiation from the sun might have more of an impact if you're already inflamed. That's my theory. Yeah. I'm not a biologist. I just know what a woman is.
Good. Another product of this little journey that I've been on is that I started making my own homemade French fries, because French fries are another one when you buy them bagged in the store, frozen. They're covered in seed oils, and usually pretty bad ones like rapeseed and canola oil.
That's the same thing.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it was a branding thing to say canola.
I was going to say, I just like, why would you put anything called rapeseed in your body? Why would you, what? Where did that, is it rapeseed? And it's
no,
just like,
that's a separate kind.
Okay.
I learned this because I have to read ingredients for my allergy, and the first place I encountered that was Nutter Butters. At least they used to in the 90s, they just proudly said, made with rapeseed.
This sounds like a porno. Nutter Butter Rapeseed. Track 9.
I don't advise consuming them in large amounts, but that could be what they do to your arteries.
So I started making my own homemade fries like getting the potato, washing the potato, cutting the potato, soaking the potato in ice cold water for at least 30 minutes. 2 hours is better, but you work with what you've got. And then rinsing them off. And then this is where it gets fun because you can season your fries however you want to. And so like now I have more control over my food. It's harder, but it's worth it. So I have found like the magical mix. The secret is a lot of paprika and coarse salt, fresh parsley also. And then you're eating like fancy fries, like, the ones that you can get at like a restaurant that are usually wrapped in paper and served like in like this vertical cone metal cup thing. And you feel fancy eating them.
And not so bad that they only give you a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just through this process, I've learned how to make really good homemade fries, and they taste better.
They are tasty.
I should also just add that, like, I mentioned this earlier, but like they're in literally everything. A friend of mine made us a meal this week, which was very sweet of her. And she dropped off, and this is not to knock the food because it was all very delicious, and we downed everything she gave us.
Yeah, it's all gone.
In there was a vanilla dessert hummus from Aldi. She's an Aldi nerd as well. And there was sunflower oil in it. And I think maybe that's used as like a thickener.
Sure.
And it's just cheaper than any natural organic product.
It'll make it last longer.
Yeah, also probably acts as a preservative. And that just sucks. I don't know. I'm being very particular right now, but I know this is sort of a weaponized word, but it is a privileged thing to be able to say, like, object to. But it just sucks that it's in literally everything. And that, if you are trying to cut down on your grocery budget, you have to make these sort of decisions about whether you want poison in your food. And I know later in this podcast, we're going to talk about how times have changed. But that's one of the ways that time has changed. And that sucks that you have to be rich to be able to afford wholesome food. That sucks.
Yeah. Most of the time I hear that conversation is in the context of food deserts. And it's not about income so much as geography, and that you have to live in a certain area where grocery stores are comfortable locating to even have the option to purchase the healthy food.
Did I grow up in a food desert?
I was going to say, I didn't know if you wanted to talk about the Dollar General Market or whatever that passed you by.
We drove through the town where our land is, where we're building the house. We don't currently live at that property yet. As we were driving through, Jace saw a Dollar General Market. And I was like, oh, yeah, back in the day, our town was really excited because we thought that we finally had a population big enough to qualify for a Dollar General Market, but it turns out we didn't. And there are other offshoots, like there's a Walmart Market. There's a Price Chopper Market that are just the smaller versions of the bigger grocery store chains that they place in these smaller towns.
Oh, okay.
So when I was growing up for about 5 years, we had an apple market, which is a sweet little, I've seen it in other smaller towns in Kansas and Oklahoma. So we had an apple market, but then I don't know what happened, but it closed down. And so then we had no grocery store for 20 miles, 25 miles, 20 miles, maybe a little further. And so then eventually we got a Dollar General, and that was a big deal because they carried things like milk and cheese and like your basic staples. They were trash in terms of quality. And by the way, Dollar General is not cheap. They upcharge everything. Do not go there if you're trying to save a buck. They do it on purpose because they plant themselves in these food deserts.
Yeah.
And, someone on the left say they're taking advantage of small towns, but they have to pay for their transportation too. And I digress, but yeah, I mean, that was a big deal when you could be like, oh crap, I need more milk for tonight's dinner. And then I'll just run down to the Dollar General and go and get the milk because we can do that now. And we were really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really big quality of life improvement, even if it's not what you would want if you were designing something from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 30-minute trip, 20 minutes in the car, and then whatever your shopping time was, I mean, you're hungry by then. But now we live closer than we've ever lived before in terms of driving time. Because when we were in Virginia, D.C., that was you could have been 5 miles away from something, but it took you 30 minutes to get
Ugh,
there.
yeah.
So we've never been, in terms of time, as close to like a Chick-fil-A and an Aldi as we are here.
True.
And so we're living it up. I did the milk thing earlier today. I was like, oops, I forgot milk. No big deal. I'll just run to the store. But then when we move out to the property, that's going to become an issue again. There's the small town grocery store, but the prices are higher. And that sort of comparison is, raises flags on our just food reliance for food manufacturers and just how we don't supply anything ourselves. Our lack of self-sufficiency in terms of food production.
Yeah.
Because if you had like a farmer down the road that you had a relationship with, you could go get farm fresh milk, and that can withstand supply shortages in the grocery store.
Yeah. Well, and we were just talking about this with your cousin. He wants to raise cows, and he wanted to know if we wanted to buy some cow from him.
He was really interested. We should get back to him. Yes, Ben, we would like a quarter cow. I will literally buy a freezer to fit it in.
Yeah.
I think the hard thing with buying a cow is that, of course, you want to use all the pieces. And so at that point, the script sort of flips, as opposed to like finding a recipe and then fitting the pieces to the recipe. You have to fit your recipe to your pieces because you have like this odd cut of beef.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste it because you bought it. And so then you have to like figure out how to dress that up.
And I'm thinking you're going to want the quarter of the cow without the liver and some of the organs.
Oh, I do not want that. I tried the beef liver supplements when my hair was falling out. I was really desperate because all the crunchy moms talk about beef liver. I literally saw women spreading mayo on raw liver.
Ooh.
And then sprinkling with salt and like taking shots. And they were like on Instagram, it's fine. It's great. That is not for me. It was not great. The chewy supplement thing, I could not do it. I tried plugging my nose. I tried drinking stuff when I was doing it. No. Anyway,
And look at your hair now.
I know. Welcome to episode 40 of the Free State Podcast. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jace.
I think we're going to keep this intro neat and tidy because we have sort of a longer episode for y'all today. And our babysitter is leaving in 4 minutes.
But if you like what you hear, you can always leave us a voicemail at anchor.fm/freestate, or you can send me an email at freestatepod@gmail.com.
Enjoy.
So a friend sent us an article from USA Today. The Alabama Supreme Court just ruled that frozen embryos are children.
Okay.
Well, obviously.
Right.
But I didn't think about the implications of the decision until I read this article.
Okay, I have a lot to say, so just...
Okay, well, I'll just give the overview. This is your Christian nationalism update because apparently part of the decision was based on theology. Explicitly.
Yeah. R.C. Sproul would say everything is about theology. So,
yeah.
Actually.
So the case involved two sets of parents who sued an IVF company because there was a liquid nitrogen accident which killed their kids, and you would be upset about that.
Okay.
I would imagine. Now, a lot of IVF practices came up after 1973 with the Roe v. Wade decision, so the legal framework around these embryos was essentially that they were treated as any other kind of private property. So you could store or dispose of them or grow them as you wished, and they weren't treated as humans. And so this is the first major court case of its kind to say, well, no, these fertilized eggs, these embryos, are actually humans with rights.
Okay. That's a big deal.
Yeah. And so I'll quote Chief Justice Tom Parker, who delivered the decision. The Alabama Chief Justice said, in summary, the theologically based view of the sanctity of life adopted by the people of Alabama encompasses the following. Number 1, God made every person in his image. Number 2, each person therefore has a value that far exceeds the ability of human beings to calculate. And number 3, Human life cannot be wrongfully destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God who views the destruction of his image as an affront to himself.
Amen.
Can you imagine reading that in a court decision?
Anything with the word wrath, I'm like, yeah.
So yeah, accidentally killing a bunch of kids would be at least manslaughter, right?
What was number 2? Can you read number 2?
Number 2, each person, therefore, has a value that far exceeds the ability of human beings to calculate.
Okay.
And so people are freaking out. The IVF industry in particular is saying, well, we can't do our jobs.
We can't make all this money that we've been able to extrapolate out of desperate wannabe parents. Oh. Yeah, go ahead.
We are going to be liable for homicide if there's a problem implanting these kids. So we're not going to be able to help all of these infertile couples.
I hope you repent.
Do you want to help the birth rate or not? Bigot.
Okay.
So I'll give you some facts before I let you go. Okay.
I love facts.
So according to HHS, the Federal Department of Health and Human Services, there are about 600,000 frozen embryos stored nationwide right now. There's another group that estimated that it could be as high as 1 million.
Yeah.
So this is how many people we're talking about. And there are around 2% of births each year are using IVF.
Whoa, that seems like a high percentage.
2?
I mean, relative to all births? Yeah, that seems high.
It's about 100,000 a year.
Okay. I also personally know several IVF parents. I think that's going to keep growing too.
Well, that's the thing, right? As people delay childbirth, they seek these interventions more often.
They try to customize their biology to what they want out of their life sequence,
But the first thing that occurred to me is, why are people complaining about declining birth rates if we've got 1 million people right here? Like, there was one headline I saw recently talking about the benefits of immigration and that all of the economic growth, or at least a large percentage of it post-COVID or whatever, was from immigration.
Was this from Cato?
I mean, probably, but whoever. And they're just talking about having sheer numbers of people makes the economy grow. And yes, that's true. If you're worried about growing the population, why not start here? If there's 1 million potential people, why are you trying to import people when we've already got them?
Tweet that. Right off the top, what the Chief Justice said as his justification for his ruling, though ultimately I agree with it, and ultimately he's right, no one is convinced.
I don't think he's trying to convince anyone. I don't think he's trying to be persuasive here. He's trying to apply the law of Alabama. Apparently, they have a personhood amendment that adopts this biblically based view of being a human. So he's just applying the law. He's not saying, oh, you should agree with me, although he agrees with that.
Okay. Fair enough. But let's talk about what's really going on. Instead of just saying we have biblical standards that I'm applying, why don't we just say I'm just applying standards? When you sent me this article and I looked it up and I was trying to decide, okay, so they're arguing that their children were killed. Okay. So let's look at the embryos that were frozen. At what stage were those embryos frozen? And so then I did, like furious Google searching and what it tells me, and this is just, a series of websites, that embryos can be frozen at the pronuclear stage when it's 1 cell, or at any stage after that, up to and including the blastocyst stage, which is 5 to 7 days after fertilization. Okay, so then I'm going on my little Google journey here, and I don't know these words. I am a journalism major, so then I found a graphic. Girlies love graphics, right? So here, I'll just show you as I'm saying this. Fertilization, day 0, the little sperm are breaching the walls of the egg, okay? And then you have day 1 when it becomes a zygote. On day 1, after the sperm has met the egg, it has unique DNA.
Yeah.
So it has half of its mother's DNA and half of its father's DNA. It is combined, therefore, at that point, and it becomes its own unique DNA.
Right.
So if that, if a scientist were to test that, it would not be Jace Langton and it would not be Laura Langton if we were in some database. It would come up as an unknown
Langton
person. Yeah. Right. Okay. And then, you have day 2, day 4, day it goes on, and then it becomes this blastocyst somewhere around day 4 or 5.
Okay.
Okay. And then it's frozen after that. And then so I'm thinking, okay, so it's frozen at this blastocyst stage. So I go, why are you looking at me like that?
The whole technology is bizarre to me.
It's crazy though, right? But if we're to really truly trust the science, then let's look at what the science tells us. And then afterwards you can affirm what the justice, what the Chief Justice of Alabama said is that science is from God. And that this, all this stuff that we're just looking at and studying is from God. But let's talk about what it is. So,
I mean, and he might have said that in another part of the opinion.
Okay, so here's my response then. A blastocyst is a ball of cells that forms early in pregnancy, about 5 to 6 days after a sperm fertilizes an egg. It implants in your uterine wall, eventually becoming the embryo and then the fetus. So the stage at which these kiddos are frozen is the stage during IVF, is the stage at which it is ready to implant into the uterine wall, which makes sense, right? Because they're going to take these frozen embryos, they're going to thaw them, and then they're going to put them inside of a womb, where it will hopefully, quote, take and implant into your uterine wall.
Right.
And then I started considering these different stages, this blastocyst stage, which is after the fertilization stage, and then the embryonic stage, and then the fetal stage. And if we started considering pregnancy and the ethics surrounding it and abortion and IVF and whatever, if we started framing stages of gestation in these stages, these embryonic and fetal, whatever, we would be having a very different conversation, because I think it nudges just a little bit closer to the truth than like week 4, week 8. That's very vague and abstract. I'm sort of embarrassed to admit this, but I've had 2 children and I didn't know half of this stuff until today. So thank you, Cleveland Clinic. So the zygote travels through the fallopian tube to the uterus about 3 to 5 days after fertilization. The cell of the zygote continuously divides, eventually forming a hollow ball of cells called a blastocyst.
I think I drew a picture of this in 7th grade.
You probably did. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah. The blastocyst stays in the uterus for several days before it implants in the inner lining of the uterine wall, endometrium. It continues to make new cells, which separate into layers. About 10 to 12 days after fertilization, the blastocyst develops into an embryo. So 10 to 12 days after fertilization, you have an embryo.
Yeah.
That's the embryonic stage, right?
And that's what we're freezing at an IVF clinic? Embryos?
Well, yes, it's near that stage. It's slightly before it because they want it to be able to implant into the and I don't think it technically becomes an embryo until it implants.
Okay.
Could be technically wrong.
Okay.
It remains an embryo until about 9 weeks after implantation, when it becomes a fetus. And then the fetal stage lasts through birth.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of science words, but if we could just refer to things in their correct terminology, if we were to call babies when they're an embryo and a fetus when it's a fetus, I would prefer if we call them babies. But if we're making a prudential call here, the same stage that your baby is in when it's delivered from your body and starts crying and you can hold it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a person, and you give it a birth certificate and a social security number, was the same stage that it was very early on in your pregnancy. That fetal stage is very early on. I believe it's still in the first trimester, if not early second, which is 12 weeks, by the way. And so if we were to just create a national standard that would say you can't harm a fetus, that would be a 12-week abortion ban.
Oh, Donnie's not going to like that. He's got a big, beautiful... Donald Trump came out either last week or this week saying he wants a national 16-week ban.
I'll take it. I'm just
saying.
I'll take it. I don't care.
But you're telling me you're okay with blastocysts having more rights than you in Alabama. And the reason I bring up that stupid point is...
Maybe she was dropped on her head when she was the blastocyst. Okay?
Well, there are many such cases. I'm sure most of the women who read this story are going to read in a similar way. So I'm bringing that up to negate your point.
Okay.
I have a different prudential calculation, because if the left was interested in facts and logic,
oh yeah, they want to kill their babies.
then
I know, I get it.
you would persuade them, but
yeah,
they're going to say, okay, kill the baby then.
okay,
They don't care.
yeah,
And so
because they're Satan worshipers.
I'm fine just cutting through all of that tedium and saying, okay, then we're going to pursue the truth. And the truth is, these are humans and you're not allowed to hurt them.
Oh, I would take up arms with you in an instant. That's why I'm here.
And I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to be persuaded at this point.
No.
And so Joe Biden's running on abortion, apparently. And I guess this case is going to be part of his campaign.
Yeah.
But what? Well, actually, it's a blastocyst, Mr. Biden. Who cares?
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, we're so dumb anymore that, like, to agree on any micro issue makes a macro sort of statement.
Yeah.
And so, like, the people who are willing to agree with you on factual assessments are extremely few and far between and dwindling, if they even exist anymore. I agree with you. Yeah. I'm ready to wave the black flag and just, like, you know, for Narnia all over the place. But
it's not even that. It's just, hey,
until
we
then,
fought.
I'm gonna keep trying, even if that makes me silly and dumb.
No, that's fine. And you're not wasting
tedious.
you're not wasting a lot of time doing that. And it's good to be educated, because a lot of them will still hide behind that pseudo sophistication, at least in public debates, to the extent we have them.
And you know what? I like it. I like, you know, addressing because now I know what a blastocyst is.
Sure.
But
I'm thinking of our normie liberal friends who are probably going to vote for Biden again.
Yeah.
They're listening to me going, okay, but I don't believe in your sky spaghetti monster god.
But I'm not talking about a sky spaghetti monster.
Exactly.
I'm talking about capital science, the science.
Yeah,
I'm putting
I'm
up
talking
my yard
about,
sign. This is what we believe here.
We believe that human beings have rights worthy of protection. It's the only reason we have a government. And so we're going to protect those rights.
Yeah.
We fought a giant war about this. I'm not going to do math on the podcast, but the Civil War.
65 minus or.
Yeah, it's not worth it. We're not doing science here. Here we go. My point being, I'd like to avoid that. And if we can just get on the same page, hopefully we can avoid an equal level of fight. We probably shouldn't dwell on that point, but I'm hoping we can come to some reconciliation before it gets to that point. But I guess we'll have to watch Alex.
I mean, we talk about this a lot, but what would that require? The dismantling of public schools and the re-edification of an entire people group? Good luck.
Well, it's all we've got.
I know. I'm trying. I'm really out here.
Yeah. You're going to buy a quarter cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll all watch Alex Garland's Civil War movie this summer and realize that looks bad.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll make another choice.
Yeah. Okay, so then what happens after this? Like, people are mad about the Alabama ruling. So
people are mad, so they're saying all of these infertile couples aren't going to be able to have IVF because the doctors are going to be too afraid of liability. They're saying they predicted outcomes like this following the Dobbs decision, getting rid of Roe v. Wade, and therefore it's going to be put back into Republicans' laps to make a public policy decision that they don't want to be responsible for. They're not going to do
that in an election year. But what happens?
No, but the Democrats are going to bring it up because it's an election year.
Oh, right.
And so all the Republicans.
Look at these crazy people. Okay, what happens in Alabama though? Now with the 4 parents that sued.
I could look. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the ruling was. Like, do they have to get damages or the clinic shut? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that would.
But
if I were the company, I'd be terrified.
But whatever the relevant laws are, whenever something like this happens to a person, are now ostensibly going to be applied in this case.
Okay, but so I remembered the other question I had when I read this article was during the thawing process, which is routine in IVF when embryos are frozen, there is not a 100% survival rate among the embryos that are thawed.
Which makes sense. Like, we don't cryogenically freeze humans. And I realize, like adult humans, I realize embryos are simpler relatively, but still crazily complex biological organisms. I can imagine being frozen doesn't work well.
Yeah. Well, and this is an overused like Fox News boomer talking point, but if you were to find a blastocyst on Mars, you know, if we were to find that on Mars, splash headlines all over New York Times, WAPO, the rest, life on Mars, right?
Yeah,
Like
we're not
we found,
alone.
oh my gosh, there are living organisms. Anyway,
No, you're right.
my other point was, what do you do from a legal standpoint with this? I guess this is now considered legal precedent in the state of Alabama, at least, where they've determined that blastocysts are humans, individual persons, endowed with individual rights. What do you do with the routine process where it's a known fact that not all of these embryos survive? I mean,
That's
so
what
then
they're
do you
saying.
start prosecuting IVF clinics?
That's a question. There's going to be some prosecutorial discretion there. They're going to see whether it's worth the state's time to do that. But I imagine they'll have to change their routine practices to minimize that risk. They're not going to be able to just throw them in the trash like a lot of them do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And then what do you do with them? I mean, what do you do with all those?
Right.
Because
there's a million of them.
Most parents don't anticipate on using all of them. And I've heard some people try to say that there's like a pro-life way to do IVF if you pledge to use all of your embryos.
Sure.
I mean, I would prefer that, but I'm also unconvinced that the freezing of the tissue does zero harm. But that's
we don't have to open
day.
up that can of worms. I'm even opposed to it in non-fertilized gametes. Like, I don't think you should freeze sperm.
Correct.
We have some history with that. I don't know what the effects are.
Listen to our podcast on Who's Your Daddy. How many parts do you have out of that, by the way? Just two? Part 1 and part 2?
2 or 3.
You might have a part 3.
Yeah.
We need to do another one with your
brother.
Your half-brother.
Yeah.
Well, your half
the
brother
newer,
in Florida.
the one I just found.
Yeah. But then I'm also wondering who's held liable in that case if you are prosecuting the parties involved of the thawing of blastocysts that haven't survived. Is it the parents or is it the clinic? And it possibly it's both. And I know that this ties into the abortion debate. Do you punish the mother? Do you punish the doctor? Do you
it's a similar
the dance there.
Similar question. I think you would have to be consistent, but you'd also have to be prudent. This is a new set of facts. People have been operating for 50 years under one set of assumptions. If you apply the law maximally tomorrow, there's going to be more disruption and you're more likely to have a backlash that makes us worse off in the long term.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to be wise and judicious about how you implement this. But once people understand, no, you can't just make a bunch of kids and throw them in the trash.
Yeah.
You'll have to figure out how to enforce that.
One thing, I'll be like funny and haha and maybe try and come across as like rough and tumble sometimes, but I do not like making people angry, and I don't like having fights with friends, and I don't like losing friends, and I like to maintain healthy, happy relationships when if at all possible. And so I have to say that this issue, of course, abortion, IVF, these are like extremely charged topics and capable. And in my experience, I've already, started to damage some of my relationships in person, online, etc.
How are you damaging them? You mean just by stating what you believe?
By standing for what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing
meaning just saying. You're not,
it. Sure. Yeah. I mean, somebody has to advocate for these kids. And so then, I'll be that on one side. And then on the other, I'll be, maybe I regret saying something or hurting someone's feelings. But then on the other side, one thing that gives me some comfort is knowing that if in all of these topics, the IVF, the abortion, the transing kids, the victims in these scenarios are children. Mm-hmm. And sort of like animal rights, I'm very interested to know who is for or has a neutral opinion on abuse against children and animals, because that tells me very clear line. I don't want to be associated with that person, because then you think just because you're bigger or older or stronger that you have the right to abuse a person or hurt a person or kill another thing that can feel pain. Mm-hmm. And that's very black and white. Brings me a lot of comfort that I take no issue with that. I know that's true. And so anyways, I go back and forth with that. And if somebody like, looks at someone kicking a dog and is like, whatever they do over there is what they do over there, and what I do over here is what I do over here. But they're hurting someone or someone else or something else. No.
Yeah,
I don't play by those same set of rules that you do.
You're a bad person.
You're a bad person.
Yeah.
You're a bad person if you don't care. I told you before, and I know I've said this on the pod before, but I tried to really narrow down what it was that made a man attractive. And I don't even know if it's a man. I think it might just be a person in general. As if they would run into a burning house fire to save someone. And then you can get into all the specifics. Like, is it your child? Is it your friend's child who's in there? What if it's your friend's wife, not a child?
Mm-hmm.
What if it's your friend's dog? I mean, you have to be reasonable to a point. But, like, if it's a human? If it's a baby?
Does he have to be told, or does he just go?
Does he have to be told? Does he just go? Does he not go? I know plenty of guys that would just not go. They'd be like, this sucks to suck. And you can detect that fairly quickly with someone. Anyway, I think you would run into a burning house fire.
Thank you.
You might go for a dog, but I might be like, no, you're a dad. It's a dog.
Yeah, it might be a talk depending on how many floors up. Yeah,
Yeah.
Baby,
but we would come to an agreement.
Yeah.
Like, we would know, because we're so aligned and talked about this, we would know what we would feel that out in the moment. Anyway, I'm sorry. This is sort of a morbid episode.
Well, let's transition then.
Okay.
Another friend
Da-da-da.
sent us another article.
Okay.
I don't know that it's cheerful.
Oh, no, it's not. It's kind of sad.
But according to Yahoo Finance, here are 7 things the middle class won't be able to afford in the next 5 years. And I want to say off the bat, the things they listed made me feel poor.
Because we were already there.
Because I was like, wait, people do that?
Okay.
So, number 1.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Okay.
Number 1, extended family trips.
This is international travel?
Especially overseas.
So dumb. What are we doing, guys?
My first reaction was, who does that? I guess I'm one of the poors, but I've never been overseas.
Like Mexico would qualify for international travel.
Okay, I guess our honeymoon, we went on a cruise. So
I've
that's
seen
international.
people take their kids to Europe.
That's what I was picturing. Like, oh, we went to Paris.
Yeah,
but that
took
is
the boys
never...
to a European soccer game.
But I'm not picturing middle class when I say that. I'm picturing coastal elite.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know a lot of people, like upper middle class, that go to Mexico regularly.
Okay.
With and without their kids.
I'm picturing with kids when it's talking about family trips.
I think
like
I think you're assuming people spend a lot of time with their kids, and that's not true.
Well, the article said the family vacation may be out of reach for the middle class within 5 years because of inflation and everything else.
Yeah.
We go to Estes Park every year.
Yeah, that's our budget-friendly family trip, and we feel like we're splurging.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to have fun.
Yeah, but times will change. We'll be able to afford more down the line. So don't.
Well, yeah. No, I'm not worried about it. I was just saying, I guess the average middle-class family goes to Paris every year, and you won't be able to. Oh.
Yeah, that's extreme decadence. Like, what a sign of the times.
But number 2, new cars will be out of reach for middle-class families. I think they already are. We're just acknowledging.
They're in debt to them.
Yeah, well, I think this is saying they won't be able to afford the payments. But what the article said that caught my eye is that the biggest drivers of those high costs for new cars are EV batteries and safety features.
Oh, who would have?
And so I'm saying when Trump wins, I want NHTSA to have an exemption for like the National Highway Transportation Safety Authority. They should give certain manufacturers a waiver for people like us who maybe want the Road Warrior car.
What do you call it? Mad Max Outfitters?
That's what I'm saying. And you'll die in a crash because the airbag is now just a spike to incentivize you to drive safer.
No, it's the old Volkswagen with the bench seat that faces out the back seat.
Oh,
you
yeah,
just
on the
like
side.
barely strap the kids in, and you throw them a turkey sandwich, and you're like, good luck, dude. We'll get there in 9 hours.
But we'll have a down payment, right?
The car seat moms are screaming.
Just turn the pod down. It's okay.
You can't take their coat off before they get in the car seat. We do
Or
that.
you have to.
Or reverse it. We do that. We take their coats off.
Yeah,
Everybody
the
calm
winter
down.
jacket's a little puffy. You don't want them to
I
have
get
too
it.
much slack.
I would hate myself anyway.
Number 3, private school tuition. How many middle class families?
Who wrote this article?
Yahoo Finance. Like, who is Cindy Lamoth, and what private school did she go to?
This is as far as I skimmed. It said that the private school private school enrollment is rapidly increasing.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's part of the withdrawal from public schools post-COVID, and so that market will even out. And if there's a lot more demand, maybe they'll build more private schools. The prices will match.
I don't even want to look. I am unfamiliar totally with what the prices of private school tuition is, but I imagine it's just asinine.
Yeah, well, you had some family go to Maranatha, which is a big Christian school here. It was really expensive.
I'm pretty sure her family's still in debt because of her time in that school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a car.
It was multiple cars.
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, it's your child's soul. I get it, but that's why we're homeschooling.
Is it?
I'm not numbering these. Okay, next. Home ownership and real estate. And this is where you wanted me to play a video, and I'll do that after we analyze what this article said. It said especially in high demand areas of the country, so like San Francisco, Miami, DC, you have to offer over the asking price, pay cash, and waive inspections. And so middle class people won't be able to do that.
Is that still true, though?
It was written yesterday.
Okay.
Okay, fine, but who wants to live there anyway?
We got an email from our bank that said that they announced new grants.
Yeah.
For people who usually wouldn't qualify for grants, meaning like if you made more money.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we were looking into these grants, and it only applies for home buyers, not home builders.
Yes. So we don't qualify. And
we're finding that a lot through this process. And so if you're listening to this and you're interested in taking the next step in real estate, home building requires a lot more upfront than home buying.
Yeah, so home building for middle class families might be out of reach.
Probably
on the coast.
Already.
How are you going to buy beachfront property and then develop it?
Yeah.
But
I don't even
who
mean
cares
that.
about the coast?
I don't even mean that. I mean a modest house for a Midwestern family. Us.
Yeah. No, it's been hard.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't be trying. My point was you shouldn't be trying to live in these high demand areas. You need to find some friends and build a compound.
Yeah.
Next was healthcare and long-term care.
Is
getting so expensive that middle class people won't be able to afford it. And it said particularly because costs in both sectors are rising faster than inflation.
Well, we're sicker than ever, and nobody's taking care of their parents who are also sicker than ever.
That's what I'm thinking. We're nationalizing health care for older people and then trying to put them in homes. That's going to be expensive, especially when there are more of them than there are of us. See our previous conversation.
I can hear both of our moms right now responding to that. And you have all these illegals crossing the border, dumping into our hospitals and just going to the ER for a runny nose.
I mean, that makes it more expensive too.
It's true. I just heard that running in the background of my head.
No, and in a lot of areas, that's going to be a major problem. But I would say the bigger problem was Medicare and Medicaid.
Absolutely.
And so if we're going to fix healthcare, we're going to have to figure out how to get the price mechanism to work again.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening to this probably knows that. And my note here when I was reading the article was, maybe you should take care of your family, but you have to work for everything else.
Yeah.
So in order to buck the trend this article is identifying, you're going to have to radically change your expectation and your plan for what you thought about the American dream. You can get it. You're just going to have to make wildly different decisions than you thought.
So Elizabeth Warren, in her thesis about the two-income trap and all that, says that keeping up with the Joneses, that accusation, basically what you and I just did, was, you're out of money because you're trying to live a life of luxury in comparison to those around, or, relative to those that you see around you. She says that that's fake and not real, and that we're only suffering because of private companies.
Well, in the healthcare sector, it looks like boomers ate too much Red Lobster and Chili's, and now they're hoping that the federal government will pay for it.
Oh, that's true. I was setting that up to say that this article seems like something that she would on its face agree with.
Yeah.
But if you actually read it, it sort of disproves her point, because a lot of it is keeping up with the Joneses. I mean, international travel
definitely.
and massive mansion houses and whatever. This is where the Dave Ramsey boomerism stops. The value of the dollar now is not the value of the dollar as it was in the 1970s and the 1980s.
Right.
And so, yes, there is a massive squeeze taking place, but it's both lifestyle and economic. And the economic influence is overwhelmingly because of big government.
And I want to know if Ozempic can bend the cost curve down, because I think diabetes is still the biggest driver.
It seems to be able to do everything else, but doesn't it they get liver disease instead? Or
I'm
something?
wondering. Well, that'll probably kill him slower, though. So
okay. we're
we're picking the best of bad options here. But I think this is a good place, just talking about the power of the dollar. I'm going to play that video you wanted.
Here's a happy family standing in front of their house and car in Detroit, Michigan in 1954. All of this on a Ford factory worker's wages. What happened? Asks a post that went viral on Twitter last week. What happened? We got richer and our houses got a lot bigger. In 1950, the average house in the United States was about 1,000 square feet, probably about the size of this one. In 2022, the average new home was 2,200 square feet, more than twice as big. And it might seem like it's harder than ever to own a home today, but in 1950, only about 55% of Americans were homeowners. Today, it's 66%. Of course,
That's
housing
great.
prices are still too high. We should be trying to lower the cost of new homes by building more of them and abolishing bad regulations like restrictive zoning laws. But that doesn't change the fact that Americans are richer than they used to be. What we consider a typical house today is much bigger, and it's filled with better appliances, many of which didn't even exist when this photo was taken.
Yeah, and those
Here's a happy-
appliances, by the way, would be much nicer if the EPA and the other regulatory industries could get out of my kitchen and just let my dishwasher push as much water as it needed to around in there to get my dishes freaking clean.
Yeah.
What? Is it the EPA or is it?
No, that's
Are
EPA.
you twitching because it's?
No, I'm
else?
twitching because I'm hearing part of our audience say, "Oh, why did they play a Lawbertarian video?" From
I
Reason?
know it is very Lawbertarian.
Because it sounds a little bit tone deaf, even though those facts are important when we're having a conversation.
Because this was our critique of Dave Ramsey in our financial episode too.
Yeah, houses are a lot bigger and they're a lot better. But I still want one.
So here's my take is like, yeah, houses are bigger and a lot better and we should be able to afford them.
Yeah. And
Like-
the reason we can't is the Fed and all of
Yes,
the other crap.
the
Like,
march of progress, we should be living in mansions with dishwashers and a butler's kitchen and 7 bedrooms and a covered porch. Why do you think everyone else before us worked so dang hard?
Yeah.
Yes. I want that for my children. I want them to just be like, oh, look at this casual mansion that I live in.
Well, and that was something else I saw. Part of the article pointed out that why real estate is out of reach for middle class people in the next 5 years is they're debating getting rid of certain provisions of the unified estate tax credit, which will make it harder to pass down real estate generationally. And so middle class people would have to go out and buy new real estate fresh with no inheritance. And yeah, that's going to make it harder, especially as prices keep going up.
Yeah, they hate generational wealth. If
Yeah,
there's any way that...
It's literally a plank in the Communist Manifesto, but
Is it?
that's beside the point, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's any way that we can make future generations more reliant on big government, we must make that the only way.
It's only equitable. Next was leisure and travel and retirement. A lot of boomers we know have talked about when they retire, they're going to travel. They've never gone anywhere, so when they have the time, they're just going to go.
This is going to make me happy.
This,
Going to this place will finally make me happy.
yes. I'm going to go to Ireland, whatever.
I'm too tired to take a walk.
This
I'm not gonna go.
this says middle class people are going to have much larger nest eggs to be able to afford the kinds of vacations they were envisioning when they started their retirement investing journey. Then the final one kind of dovetails with that. It said middle class people won't be able to afford safe investments, and they define that as bond funds and guaranteed income funds, because a lot of financial advisors tell older people to invest in those things because they're more stable. The problem is those accounts aren't keeping up with inflation anymore, and so you're actually losing money.
Well, right.
They're not stable.
Yeah.
And so middle class people are going to have their money at risk, but you should do that anyway. You should have a diversified portfolio. This is not investment advice, I guess. Do I have to say that? No, it's not Minecraft. You should put your eggs in more than one basket if you want to have eggs.
You know what just sucks, though, is like the only reason, the only people who have to pay attention to this are middle class people. Because if you're part of, the rich and the ultra rich, I guess, you have safeguards. And if you're one of the poors, you also have safeguards now, and you don't have to concern yourself with any of this. But it's like just the people in the middle who are busting it every dang day are the ones who have to be on high alert.
Yeah. You and I are comfortable, but not so comfortable that we don't have to pay attention.
Yeah.
So
I guess if we're going to do it like an in sum, I feel both and like, yes, that sucks that people can't do everything that they want to do. But if you were to look at the history, all of human history, the things that we won't be able to do in 5 years are things that most people have never done, never dreamed of doing.
Yeah. We live better than John Rockefeller did at the turn of the 20th century.
Probably true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We have air conditioning.
Yeah, exactly.
That sucks. But also, I hate it, and I've seen this a number of times, when older people who grew up in, the 70s and 80s, maybe even the 60s, were like, well, we were able to make it work. You just don't know what you're doing, or you're just spoiled, or you're just entitled, or whatever. Like, no. Also no. Because it's both of these things and another.
Uncle Dave is under fire again. Homebuyers call out Ramsey's unrealistic mortgage advice because it doesn't work for the average American anymore. So the three things they want you to do is put a 20% down payment, have a 15-year fixed rate, and then this third one is kind of where it becomes impossible for the average American, is 25% of your net income. So if you look at the median household income in this country, it's around $85,000. Your take-home pay would be $5,795, and 25% of that would be $1,448. So if you could pull this off, this is great advice, but this just isn't going to work in today's market, because the house you could get with zero debt would be $180,000. And if you look at the state's average home cost, there is nothing under $200,000. Now, somewhere in Ohio, could you find something for $180,000? Absolutely. But in most states, this isn't doable. And the average cost of a house in our country now is $400,000. Even if you look at Florida, my home state, $405,000. So here's where it gets difficult for the average home buyer. If you buy a $400,000 house, you put down your 20%, 15-year fixed rate, the payment out the door is $3,300 with property taxes and homeowner insurance as well. So you would have to gross $200,000 in order for your 25% net to cover that payment. But that's only 12% of the country. What if you live in an area like most Americans now, where you can't get a house for under $400,000, or even in Orlando, $300,000 is the lowest. So if you don't make enough money, do you suggest people move? Do you suggest people rent? Or do we update it to a lower down payment, 30-year fixed, and a higher percentage of the net pay? Because what's the cost if someone doesn't get into a house long term?
That was a TikTok critique of Dave that fit around here, and I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we're running into that. We're saving for a down payment a lot longer than the 2 years that he recommends, but I think we're doing the right thing.
Yeah. When we're in the process of putting together the budget for the house and imagining what we want it to look like and where to spend more and where to spend less, and that's kind of the stage that we're at right now. Like, I want nice cabinets. Okay, I'll downgrade and quality of, not quality necessarily, but luxury of countertops, spend some, save some. I think back to when people used to just buy their houses in cash, and what did that mean? I love that Laura Ingalls Wilder book. Mom made jackrabbit soup while Pa built our log cabin with our neighbor John, and it was 12 feet by 10 feet, and we all slept in one bed, and yeah, we're doing a lot better than that.